In the vast expanse of the cosmos, where countless stars twinkle like distant memories, the Galactic Federation was born. It was not the result of a singular event but the culmination of eons of conflict, diplomacy, and the shared desire for peace among the stars. The Federation was a beacon of unity, bringing together an array of species, each with its own unique biology, culture, and way of life. Some were aquatic beings from oceanic worlds, while others thrived in the harshest deserts or the frozen reaches of their home planets. Yet, despite their differences, they shared a common goal: to foster harmony across the galaxy. Among these diverse species were the Zylon, a race of beings who had long been revered for their unparalleled advancements in medicine and their strict ethical codes. The Zylon had evolved in a world where disease was rampant, and survival depended on their ability to heal and adapt. Over millennia, they had developed a medical system that was the envy of the galaxy, one that could cure nearly any ailment and extend life far beyond what most species could imagine. Their physicians were the elite, trained from birth to uphold the highest standards of care and to treat all life with the utmost respect. However, with such prestige came a certain arrogance. The Zylon viewed themselves as the guardians of health, the arbiters of life and death in the galaxy. To them, other species were often seen as inferior, particularly those who had not yet achieved their level of medical sophistication. Among the most misunderstood and underestimated were the humans. Humans had a reputation that preceded them, one of violence, war, and a stubborn refusal to die. They were survivors, but in the eyes of the Zylon, they were also reckless and barbaric. Their history was littered with wars, both on their home planet of Earth and beyond. They had fought among themselves for centuries before venturing into the stars, and even then, their aggressive tendencies had not abated. To the Zylon, humans were a paradox, capable of great achievements but also prone to self-destruction. The Zylon physicians, in particular, held a deep-seated disdain for humans. They saw the human body as crude, a vessel designed for violence rather than for the preservation of life. Their refusal to treat humans was not merely a matter of prejudice, it was a matter of principle. To them, treating a human was akin to mending a weapon, only for it to be used to harm others once more. They could not reconcile their ethical duty to heal with the knowledge that their work might be used to perpetuate the cycle of violence that seemed inherent to humanity. But the galaxy was a place of constant change, and even the Zylon could not remain aloof forever. A diplomatic mission was planned, one that would bring together the Zylon and the humans in a bid to strengthen ties within the Federation. It was a mission fraught with tension, for both sides harbored deep mistrust of the other. The humans, for their part, were wary of the Zylon's superiority complex, while the Zylon were skeptical of the humans' motives and their capacity for cooperation. As the mission loomed, the Zylon physicians prepared themselves for what they expected to be a challenging but ultimately routine assignment. They were there to observe, to ensure that any medical needs were met, but they had no intention of directly involving themselves with the humans. They saw this as an opportunity to demonstrate their superiority, to show that they could rise above the baser instincts that they believed governed humanity. Yet, beneath their calm and composed exterior, there was a sense of unease. The Zylon physicians had always prided themselves on their ability to remain detached, to view their patients as complex biological systems rather than as individuals with stories and emotions. But the humans were different. They were unpredictable, their biology an enigma that defied the Zylon's neatly ordered understanding of life. The scars that crisscrossed their bodies, the stories of survival and sacrifice that they carried with them, were unsettling to the Zylon, who had never known such violence or pain. As the day of the mission approached, the Zylon physicians steeled themselves for what was to come. They would uphold their ethical standards, maintain their distance, and ensure that their own superiority was never called into question. But even as they reassured themselves of their resolve, there was a lingering doubt in their minds. What would happen if they were forced to confront the very humanity they had spent so long dismissing? What if, in their quest to heal the galaxy, they found themselves needing to heal the very species they had come to despise? In the cold, clinical world of the Zylon, emotions were often seen as weaknesses, something to be controlled and suppressed. But as they would soon discover, humanity's strength lay not in their physical resilience alone but in the very emotions that the Zylon had long disdained. The mission would test not only their medical skills but also their understanding of what it truly meant to be a healer in a galaxy filled with so many different forms of life. And in the process they would learn that the scars they had so long ignored were not just marks of past violence, but symbols of a strength and endurance that went far beyond their comprehension. The mission was meant to be a testament to the fragile peace the Galactic Federation had worked so hard to maintain. For the first time, humans and Zylon would stand together as allies, their differences set aside in the interest of diplomacy. The human delegation was composed of military personnel, diplomats, and civilians, a cross-section of humanity chosen to represent their species' diversity and strength. They came with the intent to forge new bonds, to prove that despite their tumultuous past, they could be a force for stability in the galaxy. The Zylon, ever composed and clinical, took their place as observers. Their role was to ensure the mission's success by attending to any medical needs, though they had no intention of involving themselves directly with the humans. To the Zylon physicians, this was a formality, a task that, while important, did not require their full engagement. They maintained their distance, watching with a mixture of skepticism and detachment as the humans navigated the complexities of interspecies diplomacy. But the galaxy is rarely predictable, and peace is often a fragile veneer over deeper currents of conflict. Without warning, the mission came under attack. An unknown enemy, swift and ruthless, descended upon the delegation, shattering the calm with a ferocity that caught even the seasoned human soldiers off guard. Explosions tore through the air, and in an instant chaos reigned. Civilians screamed, soldiers barked orders, and the sound of weapons fire filled the air. The Zylon physicians, who had until that moment remained aloof, were thrust into the heart of the conflict. The protocols they had so carefully crafted, their plans to observe from a distance, were rendered meaningless in the face of the carnage unfolding before them. They were trained to save lives, and now they had no choice but to act. Reluctantly, they moved to assist the injured. What they found shocked them. The humans they had dismissed as crude and violent were covered in scars, deep, jagged marks that spoke of battles fought and survived. These were not the pristine bodies the Zylon were accustomed to treating, but ones marred by a lifetime of conflict. And yet, these humans, despite their injuries, were still fighting, still pushing forward. The Zylon physicians began their work, their movements efficient but tinged with an undercurrent of disbelief. The wounds they encountered were severe. Gaping lacerations, shattered bones, burns that seared flesh to the bone. Injuries that would have been fatal to most species were treated with the grim determination of those who had seen worse and survived. As the physicians worked, their initial reluctance gave way to something they had not expected: respect. The scars that crisscrossed the humans' bodies were more than just evidence of violence. They were stories, written in flesh, of resilience and endurance. Each mark told a tale of survival against impossible odds, of battles fought not just with weapons but with the will to live. The Zylon, who had always seen scars as imperfections, began to see them in a different light. These humans, with their battered bodies, possessed a strength that went beyond mere physicality. It was a strength born of hardship, of a refusal to succumb to the countless dangers they had faced. As the Zylon physicians treated the humans, they found themselves drawn into the stories behind the scars. They listened as the humans, even in their pain, recounted the battles that had left them marked. They spoke of wars fought on distant worlds, of comrades lost and victories won. There was a rawness to their tales, an honesty that the Zylon found both unsettling and compelling. These were not the detached accounts of clinical observations. They were the lived experiences of beings who had faced death and emerged, scarred but unbroken. The more the Zylon learned, the more their perceptions began to shift. The humans were not the barbaric savages they had once thought. They were survivors, their scars a testament to their ability to endure. The Zylon physicians, who had always prided themselves on their detachment, found themselves moved by the resilience they witnessed. The injuries they treated were severe, but it was the spirit of the humans that left the deepest impression. Despite the pain, despite the overwhelming odds, the humans refused to give up. In the midst of the chaos, the Zylon physicians experienced something that went beyond their medical training. They saw the humanity in their patients, a connection that transcended the physical. The scars, once a source of disdain, became symbols of a strength that the Zylon had never fully understood. And in that moment, as they worked to save lives, they began to see the humans not as inferiors, but as equals, beings with a capacity for resilience and survival that commanded respect. The attack left its mark on everyone involved, but it was the Zylon physicians who were most profoundly changed. They had entered the mission with a clear sense of superiority, convinced of their own ethical and medical prowess. But what they had encountered in the humans was something they had not anticipated, a strength that went beyond physical endurance, a will to survive that was rooted in something deeper. The scars that had once repelled them now served as a reminder of the lessons they had learned, and the respect they had gained for a species they had once dismissed. The humans, with their scarred bodies and unyielding spirits, had shown the Zylon physicians a new understanding of what it meant to be strong. As the dust settled after the attack, the Zylon physicians found themselves faced with a puzzle that defied their understanding. Human physiology, a subject they had once dismissed as primitive, now intrigued them in ways they had never anticipated. The humans they had treated bore injuries that should have incapacitated, if not killed, most other species in the galaxy. Yet, these humans not only survived but recovered at a rate that astonished even the most seasoned Zylon healer. Driven by a blend of professional curiosity and an emerging sense of respect, the Zylon physicians began to study the humans more closely. What they found challenged everything they had believed about biology and resilience. Human cells seemed to possess a unique ability to regenerate, knitting together wounds that should have left them crippled. The speed at which their bodies responded to treatment was unlike anything the Zylon had encountered before. It was as if the human body was designed not just to survive, but to overcome adversity in ways that defied logic. The more the Zylon delved into the intricacies of human physiology, the more questions arose. How could a species that had evolved in such a relatively short time develop such resilience? What was the driving force behind their ability to heal, to endure, and to persist against odds that would break most others? These questions gnawed at the Zylon physicians, pulling them deeper into their study of these remarkable beings. But it wasn't just the physical resilience of the humans that captivated the Zylon. As they examined the scars that crisscrossed their patients' bodies, they began to understand that these marks were more than just remnants of past injuries. They were symbols, each scar a testament to a story of survival, of sacrifice, of emotional endurance. The Zylon, who had always viewed scars as imperfections, began to see them in a new light. For humans, these scars were badges of honor, worn with a sense of pride that the Zylon found both baffling and profound. In the sterile, clinical world of Zylon medicine, scars were something to be erased, a reminder of the body's failure to remain intact. But for humans, scars were different. They represented the battles fought and the strength required to overcome them. Each scar carried with it the memory of pain, yes, but also the memory of triumph. The Zylon physicians found themselves drawn into these stories, learning that the scars were not just physical, but also emotional. They spoke of loss, of love, of the drive to protect those who could not protect themselves. This realization began to shift the Zylon's perspective. The humans, who they had once seen as crude and barbaric, were revealing themselves to be far more complex than they had imagined. The resilience they had observed was not just a product of physical toughness, but of a psychological strength that stemmed from the deep emotional bonds they formed with one another. The scars, both visible and hidden, were a testament to a species that had endured more than any other the Zylon had encountered, and who had emerged from that endurance with a capacity for empathy, for love, and for an unyielding will to survive. As the Zylon physicians continued their work, they found their initial disdain giving way to something they had never expected: respect. They began to see that the very qualities they had once dismissed as weaknesses, emotion, empathy, the ability to form deep connections, were in fact the source of the humans' extraordinary resilience. The humans were not just surviving, they were thriving, adapting to each new challenge with a combination of physical strength and emotional tenacity that the Zylon had not thought possible. This newfound respect did not come easily. The Zylon had built their entire medical ethos on the belief that detachment and clinical precision were the keys to effective healing. But the humans were teaching them something different. They were showing that true resilience came not from the absence of emotion, but from the ability to embrace it, to allow it to fuel the drive to survive and to protect. The Zylon physicians, who had once prided themselves on their ability to remain distant, found themselves reconsidering what it meant to be a healer in a galaxy filled with so many different forms of life. The more they learned, the more the Zylon realized that they had only scratched the surface of human potential. These beings, who had once seemed so alien, were becoming more familiar, more relatable. The scars that had initially repelled them were now seen as symbols of a shared experience, of the universal struggle to endure and to overcome. The Zylon physicians, who had entered the mission with a sense of superiority, were now learning that there was much they could learn from the very beings they had once looked down upon. In the end, it was not just the humans who had been changed by the events of the mission. The Zylon physicians, too, found themselves altered in ways they had never anticipated. They had come to see that the strength of a species could not be measured by physical resilience alone, but by the ability to endure emotionally, to carry the weight of scars both visible and hidden, and to continue forward with an unyielding spirit. The humans, with their complex blend of physical and emotional resilience, had shown the Zylon a new way of understanding what it meant to survive in a galaxy filled with challenges. And in doing so, they had earned the respect of a species that had once considered them inferior. The Zylon physicians, now deeply immersed in their study of human physiology, turned their attention to a process that, in their culture, was merely a clinical procedure: reproduction. What they encountered in humans was unlike anything they had ever imagined. The human reproductive system, with all its complexities, was a source of both scientific curiosity and growing amazement for the Zylon. They approached it with the same analytical mindset they applied to everything, but the more they uncovered, the more they realized this was not just biology. It was something far more profound. The Zylon had always viewed reproduction as a necessary but unremarkable function of life. In their society, it was a controlled process, devoid of the emotional entanglements that seemed to characterize so much of human life. But with humans, everything was different. The sheer physicality of the process, the way the human body adapted and endured, was nothing short of remarkable to the Zylon. They marveled at the intricate dance of hormones, the changes that prepared the female body for the intense process of childbirth, and the resilience that allowed it to recover and begin the cycle anew. What truly astonished them, however, was childbirth itself. The Zylon had never seen anything like it. The pain, the physical exertion, the way the human female body could endure such an ordeal and emerge scarred but strong, was beyond their understanding. It was as though the human body was built for survival at every level, not just in the harsh environments they had seen humans thrive in, but in the very act of bringing new life into the world. But it wasn't just the physical aspect that caught the Zylon off guard. It was the emotional intensity of the experience. They observed the bonds that formed between mother and child, the deep connection that seemed to be forged in those first moments of life. This was something the Zylon had never truly understood. How could biology be so intertwined with emotion? In their own culture, reproduction was a sterile process, free from the messiness of feelings. But in humans, it was an experience filled with love, fear, hope, and an unyielding determination to protect the new life that had been brought into the world. The more the Zylon observed, the more they found themselves grappling with their own beliefs. They had always prided themselves on their clinical detachment, on their ability to separate emotion from the practice of medicine. But here, in the rawness of human childbirth, they saw something that challenged that detachment. The strength of the human female, both physical and emotional, was not something that could be easily categorized or dismissed. It was a force of nature, a testament to the resilience that seemed to define the entire species. Comparing human reproduction to their own was an exercise in contrasts. The Zylon approach was efficient, clinical, devoid of any emotional attachment. Children were brought into the world through controlled means, raised in environments that emphasized the importance of logic and reason over the chaotic and unpredictable emotions that humans seem to revel in. But as the Zylon studied human parents, how they nurtured, how they connected with their offspring, they began to see the flaws in their own system. The emotional bonds that humans formed with their children, the way they would sacrifice anything for their well-being, was a strength that the Zylon had never truly considered. This discovery shook the Zylon physicians to their core. They had entered this mission with a clear sense of superiority, confident in the belief that their way was the best way. But the more they learned about humans, the more they realized that there was so much they did not understand. The human capacity for emotion, once seen as a weakness, was beginning to appear as a strength, a driving force that enabled them to survive and thrive in ways the Zylon had never anticipated. In the quiet moments of reflection, the Zylon began to question their own practices. Was it possible that their clinical detachment had blinded them to the true nature of life? Had they, in their pursuit of perfection, overlooked the very things that made life worth living? The humans, with their chaotic emotions and their scarred bodies, were showing them that there was more to medicine, more to healing, than they had ever imagined. The discovery of the human breeding system was more than just a scientific revelation for the Zylon. It was a moment of profound reevaluation. They began to see that their preconceived notions of humanity were flawed, that the things they had once dismissed as weaknesses were in fact the very qualities that made humans strong. The Zylon physicians, who had once seen themselves as the pinnacle of medical science, were now beginning to understand that they had much to learn from the very beings they had once considered inferior. As they continued their work, the Zylon could no longer ignore the impact of what they had discovered. The human ability to endure, to connect, to love, was not just a biological function, it was a fundamental aspect of their survival. And in that realization, the Zylon found themselves changed. They had come to this mission with the intent of studying humans, but in the process, they had uncovered something far deeper. They had discovered that true strength was not just about physical resilience, but about the ability to feel, to connect, and to endure, not in spite of emotions, but because of them. In the end, the Zylon physicians were left with a new understanding of humanity, one that challenged everything they had believed. The humans, with their flawed and fragile bodies, had shown them a new way of seeing the world, one that was filled with both pain and beauty. And in that new understanding, the Zylon found themselves humbled, realizing that the strength of humanity was something far greater than they had ever imagined. The Zylon physicians, having been thrust into the depths of human biology and culture, were on the brink of a discovery that would change their understanding of resilience and survival. What began as a mission to observe and judge had evolved into a profound exploration of what it truly meant to endure. Through their interactions with the humans, the Zylon had already come to respect the scars that told stories of survival, the emotional bonds that fueled the strength to protect and persevere. But as they dug deeper into human genetics, they uncovered something even more astonishing. The Zylon had long believed that strength was a purely physical attribute, a measure of endurance, and the ability to withstand the ravages of the universe. But the humans defied this narrow definition. They discovered that human resilience was not just about surviving physical harm. It was deeply tied to their psychological and emotional strength. This strength had been passed down through generations, shaped by centuries of struggle and adaptation. The Zylon realized that the very emotions they had once dismissed as weaknesses, love, fear, hope, were the foundation of the human's unyielding spirit. This revelation shook the Zylon to their core. They had always valued detachment, believing that emotion clouded judgment and weakened resolve. Yet here were humans, their emotional connections forming an unbreakable bond that made them stronger, more resilient, more capable of facing adversity. The Zylon began to see that true strength was not just the ability to endure, but the capacity to feel deeply, to connect with others, and to draw strength from those connections. It was a psychological resilience, a mental fortitude that had been honed over countless generations, and it was unlike anything the Zylon had ever encountered. As they continued their study, the Zylon made a startling discovery. Buried within the human genome was a genetic anomaly, a unique adaptation that had developed as humanity expanded into the stars. This anomaly allowed human DNA to incorporate and neutralize alien pathogens, effectively making them immune to diseases that could devastate other species. It was an adaptation born of necessity, a genetic shield that had evolved to protect humanity as they ventured into unknown and potentially hostile environments. The implications of this discovery were profound. Humanity, once seen as inferior and barbaric, now held the key to a new frontier in galactic medicine. Their ability to adapt, to incorporate the genetic material of other species and neutralize threats, positioned them as a potential cornerstone of health and survival across the galaxy. The Zylon, who had always prided themselves on their medical superiority, were forced to confront the fact that humanity had surpassed them in a critical area. The very species they had once looked down upon now possessed a genetic advantage that could save countless lives. This realization shook the foundation of Zylon medical ethics and practice. They had always believed in their own superiority, convinced that their methods were the pinnacle of medical science. But the humans had shown them that there was more to healing than clinical precision. The combination of psychological strength and genetic adaptability had created a species that could not only survive but thrive in the harshest conditions the galaxy had to offer. The Zylon could no longer deny the potential that humanity held, not just for themselves, but for the entire Galactic Federation. The impact of these discoveries was immediate and far-reaching. The Zylon, once reluctant to treat humans, now saw them as equals, even as potential partners in the advancement of galactic medicine. Their attitude toward humanity shifted from disdain to respect, from superiority to humility. The humans, with their emotional resilience and genetic adaptability, had shown the Zylon that strength came in many forms, and that true healing required an understanding of both the body and the mind. As the mission came to a close, the Zylon physicians were left with much to ponder. They had come to this mission with the intent of observing and judging, but they were leaving with a new understanding of what it meant to be strong, to survive, and to heal. The humans had taught them that strength was not just about physical endurance, but about the ability to connect, to feel, and to adapt in ways that the Zylon had never imagined. The implications for the future were vast. The discovery of the genetic anomaly positioned humanity as a potential leader in the field of galactic medicine, a species whose very DNA could hold the key to protecting countless others from the dangers of the universe. The Zylon, once the undisputed leaders in medical science, now faced the reality that they had much to learn from the very beings they had once dismissed as inferior. In the broader context of the Galactic Federation, these discoveries could lead to new alliances, new partnerships, and a new era of cooperation. Humanity, with their unique strengths, could become a central figure in the ongoing efforts to protect and preserve life across the galaxy. The Zylon, humbled by their experiences, were ready to embrace this new future, one in which they would work alongside the humans to advance the frontiers of medical science and ensure the survival of all species.